The franchise with the most controversy in Smash Ultimate's lineup would arguably have to go to Fire Emblem. Ever since Marth from Shadow Dragon and Roy from the Binding Blade, the main protagonist of almost every Fire Emblem entry has been brought into the roster. Ike from the Tellius series, Robin, Lucina, and then later Chrom from Awakening, Corrin from Fates, and now Byleth from Three Houses. Where other big names will feature 1 or 2 representatives at most, Fire Emblem has 7. The overabundance of sword fighters with nearly identical movesets have raised memes about there being too many swordies, but there's one character who has deviated away from the usual set of moves by incorporating not just a unique array of specials, but also adhering to one of Fire Emblem's most iconic mechanics, weapon durability. Robin's introduction to the game was somewhat low-key. Even though Fire Emblem Awakening was a runaway success, they weren't as high profile as other newcomers like Pac-Man, Cloud, Mega Man, and whatnot. Strangely, they've also received arguably the least amount of front page exposure out of all Fire Emblem characters, including their popularity in the competitive scene. So for today, let's talk about why no one plays Robin. By the way, did you know that in Robin's home game, they were actually very big eaters, believe it or not? So if you want to try picking them up, why not try out today's sponsor too, Factor. Factor is a meal prep service that delivers handmade meals right to your door. Instead of wasting tons of money on fast food or eating out, it provides you with healthy meals pre-made and ready to eat within 2 minutes or less. The meal plans offer a variety of menu choices with a rotating selection of 27 plus options for meals and more than 33 add-ons like smoothies, keto shakes, desserts, and more. Speaking of keto shakes, if you have a specific preference or diet such as keto, weight loss, or if you're vegetarian or vegan, you can adjust your selections accordingly thanks to their range of plans from 4 meals a week to 18. Factor lets you modify food preferences very easily. I use meal preps a lot myself and can vouch for them. They're a good partner of mine on Vars 1 and 2, and I'm happy to have them sponsor Vars 3 as well. If you're interested in trying out Factor, then head on over to go.factor75.com and use my code POGVARS60 for 60% off your first box. There's also a link in the description below. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's go back to why no one plays Robin. Robin's actually one of my favorite Fire Emblem units for a multitude of reasons, despite being a self-insert. Personality-wise, they're kind of a Mary Sue in a lot of cases, but the reason I'm a big fan of them is mostly their class, Tactician. I'm honestly surprised it took Fire Emblem 13 games to have a sword mage. For those who don't play Fire Emblem, Robin is able to use both physical and magical weaponry, as prior to them, most classes would only have access to one or the other. I might be wrong on that, I haven't played Genealogy of the Holy War or Thracia yet, so maybe there was a sword mage user before. Whatever, Smash Bros, let's get back on topic. Robin's also the first character to functionally carry over the weapon durability feature from Fire Emblem. Each of their specials utilize different elemental magic and they alternate between 2 weapons, a bronze sword and the Levin sword, the latter possessing far greater strength but a finite number of uses. In a manner of speaking, you can say they were the original Joker or Steve before Joker and Steve came out. Arsene empowers Joker's attacks in a similar fashion to how Levin sword empowers Robin's, while the need for resources to use specific moves on Steve emulates a limited number of uses on Robin's weaponry. The only difference is that Robin's equipment regenerates after breaking over a period of time. Unlike the other Fire Emblem characters who mostly specialize in mid-range combat with the exception of Roy and Chrom, Robin's central theme is predicated more on trapping and zoning. Utilizing their wide array of specials, they have an aptitude for pressuring you from afar or up close depending on the situation. I think a lot of players don't even consider them to be sword fighters, since the bulk of their gameplay hinges on setting up frame traps and KO setups where swordies typically excel in neutral exchanges or mid-range combat. While their peers can more or less abuse their disjointed hitboxes to their advantage, Robin has to approach things a bit more intelligently, emphasizing precision and situational control over spacing and direct confrontation. It's a breath of fresh air, all things considered. Yet ironically, Robin's deviant playstyle was ignored in favor of the more traditional, straightforward nature of Roy, Marth, Lucina, Ike, and so on. A recurring problem with sword fighters up until that point was their compulsory need to approach. Roy, Marth, and Ike were by and large melee fighters. They had no choice but to approach given the absence of projectiles in their kit, leading to them having rather predictable options. In contrast, Robin has no shortage of projectiles, so one would believe they have an advantage due to possessing something other swordies don't. But that's not the case. Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. The presence of Levin sword posits an extreme variance in pressure. While available, they have some of the best normals in the game. While recharging, however, they have some of the worst normals in the game. Having brought up the earlier comparison with Joker and Steve, there's 2 main reasons why Robin's quote-unquote Arsene mechanic is far more cumbersome than Joker's or Steve's. First, Levin sword and the magic tomes to a lesser extent do replenish their durability reasonably fast, so you only have to wait at most like 30 seconds before using them again. However, unlike Arsene, they exhaust in durability simply from being used, whether or not those hits actually connect. Recklessly using up your supply of weapons leaves you completely devoid of pressure from that type of attack during that time. For example, Steve's diamond, gold, and iron tools dramatically amplify his combat potential in a number of ways: damage, frame data, and kill power, but he's more than capable of putting up a fight with merely wood and stone tools. Even though some of his attacks like down air and side B require ample amounts of iron, he has near complete control over being able to get those back. For Robin, Bronze Sword is such a downgrade in every offensive attribute to the point where it equated to playing Marth, except every hitbox is a sour spot. It's almost that bad. As for the tomes, there's a hard 10-second recharge rate on Arcfire and Thunder, your two primary neutral tools, 4 seconds on Elwind, which may not sound like a long time, but if God forbid you were thrown off stage during those 4 seconds, you have a worse recovery than even Little Mac, and Nosferatu is offline for 30 seconds. You have no way of accelerating any of this, making Robin weaker or completely vulnerable for small periods of time throughout the course of a match. It's not even like Hero, where if you deal damage to your opponent, you recover mana. Worse yet, you have to use every weapon possible in your arsenal as often as possible. Joker's Rebellion Gauge only depletes on taking damage, meaning he can spam his entire moveset as much as he wants and suffer no innate consequences for it. Steve's tools have so much durability that you can basically mash on them, and provided his inventory is not completely empty, he can instantly build a new set whenever one breaks. What differentiates Robin's situation from Joker, Steve, or Cloud is that Robin's ammo system is all or nothing. I'm sure any Joker player wishes they could have Vars set permanently active, or Steve to begin every game with diamond tools, or Cloud to have his old limit back, but they still have access to their regular attacks. It's not like Joker can only use gun when Arsene's out. As Robin, you straight up lose the ability to use a special move. Robin may very well be the only character in Smash Bros who cannot mash. There are other attacks that function on a limited supply of resources like Banjo's Wonder Wing, but that's one move. Robin's entire kit is on ammo, and I've never seen Bronze Sword kill. Like ever. Credit where credit is due, Robin's natural playstyle is that of a trapper who specializes in heavy whiff punishes, and it's highly improbable for you to be deprived of more than one attack at the same time. The durability isn't that bad. So while you're waiting for Thunder to come back up, you can use your 11 Sword and Arcfire to buy time. Or if you exhaust your supply of Elwind, you can hunker down and buy yourself a few seconds. Anyone who's played Smash Ultimate competitively before though knows that entire sets can be won or lost in mere seconds. That's not a risk players want to deal with. To repeat myself for the nth time, consistency stands above all else as the most crucial element to success in esports or just sports in general. As a competitor, it's always better to consistently place, 7th at every major than to get 1st place at one and then drawn in pools for your next 5 tournaments. That's not to say Robin's inconsistent to such an egregious extent, but if there's any possibility of something going wrong in a fighter's repertoire that the player has zero agency in mitigating or preventing, that can be a huge turnoff for players. Now, the one instance where variations in power is welcome is if the low point is still serviceable to where all that variation does is serve to augment whatever you were doing before. Using arbitrary values, let's say you have character X who fluctuates between 80% and 140%. They have a massive power spike of 40% above average, but you'll be dealing with a potential bad roll, making you 20% below average. On the other hand, there's character Y who fluctuates between 100% and 120%. Even though character X has a higher ceiling per se, character Y has a lower floor. And reiterating the notion of consistency, character Y is inherently a safer option even though both average out at 110%. An example of character Y is Cloud. His base moveset is fantastic even without empowered specials and physics from limit. Back air is still back air, up smash is still up smash, blade beam, cross slash, and climb hazard are still very practical tools. All limit does is take his decent base properties and make it slightly better, if only for a short while. I understand Robin and Cloud are fundamentally different, but we're just comparing their power variants. However, the second problem is that Robin's base properties aren't sufficient enough to buy them the time they need to reach the upper levels of power. If I could draw an estimated variance, I would say Robin is like 80% to 130%. 11 sword aerials are smash attacks, I don't care what you say. Strong hit back air does something like 19% of full power and kills ridiculously early. 11 sword up air is easily one of the best up airs in the game. All in all, when Robin has access to their full range of tools, the only thing holding them back is their poor physics and debatably precise hitboxes. That being said, when any one of those tools are inactive, Robin loses a vital resource conducive to an equally vital aspect of a game state. When Thunder is down, you're missing the only long-range attack option that forces your opponent to approach. As a whiff punish trapper, you're essentially deprived of an easy way to accomplish your win condition. When Arcfire is down, you're missing your primary option for traps and kill setups. Arcfire is integral to several mid-percent kill setups, bypassing the need to land stray hits in neutral to close out stocks. This is imperative on account of Robin's poor mobility, something that really comes in handy when you're in those intense, last stock lasted situations. When Elwind is down, I explained it already, you have no recovery. You get thrown off stage, you die. Nosferatu is the only special where I'd argue having it offline isn't all that consequential, but given it's a command grab capable of healing upwards of 40% in a single cast, it's effective in mixing up your neutral. I am aware that overuse of your Levinsword and or specials results in them becoming throwable items, which can be used to further mix up Robin's gameplay, but ask yourself this, is a single item throw worth forfeiting an entire attack for a period of time? Never. As mentioned before, careful planning around using your other attacks while waiting for something to recharge can alleviate pressure, and Robin's potent defensive game lends credence to that. But just as how you can plan around a lost resource, so too can your opponent. Like I said, a few seconds may not seem like a whole lot in a vacuum, but in Smash, even 10 seconds can feel excruciatingly long. Despite no longer lasting indefinitely, Cloud is able to hold on to limit for 15 seconds, and if you're ever on the receiving end of that, 15 seconds feels like 50. This is where Robin's other attributes become problematic. They have the second worst ground speed in the game and average air physics. That's abysmal mobility for a middleweight character. Against any rushdown fighter or close quarters combatant who breaks past their line of defense, Robin can't escape pressure by running away, nor do they have any reliable out of shield option besides Nair and Grab, both of which are only in front. And as a whiff punisher, lacking a strong out of shield option on both sides really hurts. While we're on the subject of pressure, Robin's recovery is deceptively underwhelming. Elwyn travels an impressive distance but offers no protection from above, making them quite susceptible to two-framing or spikes. That's on top of the possibility of Elwyn running out at critical moments. To my knowledge, you're able to full cast Elwyn 5 times at full durability. Assuming you're thrown off stage with only 2 or 3 uses left, your opponent just has to keep you away from the ledge and watches you SD from running out of ammo. Robin players normally circumvent this by tossing Arcfire at the ledge to grant them a measure of safety, but that fails to address the root problem. It only relieves the symptoms. Lastly, Robin's devastating attacks are all hindered in some way that either telegraphs them enough for the opponent to see coming or has no shock factor. Arcfire is actually 1 frame faster than Ness's PK Fire, but the slow travel speed and very small trigger hitbox makes it far easier to see coming, even though it erupts into a pillar of fire when hitting a shield unlike PK Fire. Behaving like a charge shot, Thunder is easy to notice from afar, especially Arc Thunder and Thoron. Nosferatu's amazing utility is cancelled out by Robin's terrible approach game, and by extension, Levinsword's powerful aerials are made less so by the fact that they usually lose in mid-range combat against other swordies. I feel like one thing they would really benefit from, while maintaining their physics, is a burst movement option. Most of the characters with subpar ground speed have some way to gap close and surprise their opponent. Ganondorf has Flame Choke and Wizard Kick, Incineroar has a Alolan Whip, which doesn't look very impressive, but it's a burst movement option nonetheless. Steve is Minecart, Elytra and Anvil, Snake is Dash Attack, Simon and Richter are Down Tilt, Falco is Phantasm, you get the idea. If Robin has some way to get up in your face, that would do wonders for them. They have a few shield breaking setups and phenomenal pressure in general. 11 sword arrows are decently safe on shield, and through Arcfire they can force catch-22 situations with their opponent, especially on the ledge. Thematically, Robin's experience is all about planning and thoughtful execution, true to their nature as a tactician, but more often than not, it feels like they don't have the freedom to evaluate every option and adapt to every situation because the good stuff about them is directly hindered by the bad stuff about them. They're kind of in the same situation as Sora. They don't play like ordinary swordies, and their margin for error is ever so slightly unforgiving enough to turn prospective users away. I understand why though, at times it can feel like Robin is a jack of all trades, master of none. If you're looking for strictly zoning, you have a better shot playing someone like Samus. If you want a hardcore trapper, you got Pac-Man or Steve. If you're looking for a traditional swordie, there's plenty of options to choose from. Being multi-purpose can be a double-edged sword. Your power budget is innately split between 2 or more functions, naturally making you inferior to a specialist in either field, and there's no guarantee the other field will make up the deficit. That uncertainty runs back full circle to the problem with inconsistency. In Robin's own title, they're the most versatile character in the game, and there's traces of that in their gameplay. They have a lot of tools for different scenarios, the sword for mid-range combat, the various stones for zoning, trapping, grappling, what have you. That's why I feel like they're such a cool concept and an underrated character, but it sucks that their practical assets, or lack thereof, is getting in the way of that. It would have been nice if Robin got a few more buffs. Another thing I wondered is how significant the change in their standing would be if hypothetically their weapons had infinite durability, if you could mash them like any other character. I'm not sure how much Robin mains will agree or disagree with me on how sparing you have to be with your specials and Levinsword, but obviously its only purpose is to restrict how freely you can use them as a means to balance how strong they are. Besides Levinsword though, are their specials really that strong so as to warrant a fixed number of uses per rotation? I know they're strong, but they don't seem that strong. That's another topic for another time though. Robin's one of those characters who has a ton of potential if players can break past their glaring deficiencies, notably in terms of mobility and how jarring the durability is. Just imagine if they had Roy or Cloud physics, that's probably the main thing holding them back right now. Anyways, feel free to share your thoughts on Robin in the comments down below. Aside from that, if you enjoyed today's video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter at Vars, joining my Discord server, and if you'd like to support me further, check out my Patreon page. By donating, you'll get access to benefits for all 3 of my channels, Vars, Vars 2, and Vars 3. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.